The technologies used by our ancient ancestors are often a mystery to us. Many of our ancestors didn't have a written language, and some of them didn't even leave drawings behind, so their knowledge is lost to us. While the technology we enjoy today is marvelous, it's hard not to feel like we've lost a little knowledge when we study the accomplishments of those who came before us. Watch this video and you'll see what we mean. The quality of a sword was hugely important to the warriors of a few hundred years ago. If your sword was brittle, weak, or otherwise defective, you'd be at a major disadvantage in a combat situation. For Indian warriors, nothing short of a well-made sham shear will do. The single-edged swords with their curved blades have long been admired for their craftsmanship. But it's only in the 21st century that we've worked out how the 17th century weapons were made. The swords, which probably originated in Persia before spreading across Asia and India, were the inspiration behind the scimitar. A laboratory analysis of a surviving sham shear revealed it to be made of pure wood steel, a kind of crucible steel that was popular in the India of the time. The banding on the blade is the result of carbon and iron mixing to form a new substance called tite. A master craftsperson would have allowed the cast metal to cool very slowly in order to allow the cementite type to form. If they'd simply plunged it into cold water, it wouldn't have worked. Making the swords more slowly than was strictly necessary would have been counterintuitive for the people of the time, but it resulted in better blades. Are Australia's gospel, glyphs, and ancient mystery, or a modern hoax? Historians and archaeologists can't decide. The glyphs appear identical to those found on the monuments of ancient Egypt. According to Steve Strong, an Australian archaeologist, they're 4,500 years old and prove that the Egyptians made it as far as the Australian mainland. That's a hugely controversial theory from a historical point of view, so it's no surprise that it's disputed by other historians and archaeologists. The glyphs were first spotted during the 1970s and have been studied extensively by many people ever since. Experts in Egyptology say there are grammatical and freezing errors in the hieroglyphs, and so they must be fake. Strong and the academics who support him say that the literacy of ancient Egyptian explorers may not have been as strong as those who were chosen to paint glyphs on temples and tombs. They also point out that mistakes sometimes appear even on those monuments, so they don't disprove Strong's claims. There are no other known ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs in Australia, which begs the question of what happened to these ancient explorers if they were ever here at all. The Dead Sea Scrolls are among the most famous ancient documents in the world, with an age of roughly 2,000 years. One of them, though, is not like the others. The Temple Scroll is covered in a mysterious chemical coating that was applied before the text was written. A study performed in 2019 identified a mixture of calcium, sodium, and sulfur on the scroll applied directly to the animal skin. Aside from strengthening the skin, it also makes the scroll brighter and easier to read. The chemical mixture does not occur naturally in the Dead Sea, so it strongly implies that either the scroll was written elsewhere or at least that the material came from elsewhere. Given there was no shortage of animal skins in the region, there's no obvious reason for this to happen. The other Dead Sea Scrolls were written on animal skins that were cleaned up, dried out, and then rubbed with sea salt to prepare them. A different process was followed with the Temple Scroll, one that isn't repeated with any other scroll from either the region or the era. The ancient Romans were a civilization so mighty that they get credited with many archaic conventions that might even include some that they had nothing whatsoever to do with. Take the Patara pipes, for example. You'll find this incredible feat of ancient engineering in Turkey. They run between the sites of many former Roman settlements in the area, but did the Romans create them to run between the settlements, or did they arrange their settlements around the pipes? The former seems more likely, but the style of pipes isn't consistent with anything the Romans built anywhere else. There's also a lack of written evidence to support the idea of the Romans building them. The Romans were never shy of celebrating their achievements but the Roman pillar that was discovered in Patara in 1993 says nothing about them. It records several great Roman achievements in the city, but the pipes don't even get a mention in passing. Given that the inscriptions even see fit to record the creation of simple roads, it seems a curious omission. Perhaps the pipes are the work of an unknown civilization, and we're already here by the time the Romans arrived. Chartres Cathedral in France is known for its outstanding beauty, and much of its beauty can be attributed to its stunning stained glass windows. The 167 surviving windows, all of which were created during the Middle Ages between the 12th and 13th centuries, are the most complete surviving group of their era anywhere in the world. Most of them depict biblical scenes, although there are additional representations of the monarchs, saints, and prominent knights and priests of the time. The bright colors used in the designs come from metal oxide. The ruby red shade comes from copper oxide, the blue from cobalt, green from iron, and yellow from sulfur. All of these materials would have to be added to the glass during the heating process to achieve the desired effect. The painted details were then added with an unpleasant-sounding mix of metal oxides, vinegar, and urine, and then the paint and glass were fused together in a count. The intricacy and complexity of the work would be a challenge for any modern artist. To think that people were capable of doing this 900 years ago is incredible. Modern surgery is rooted in science. The surgery of ancient times is often thought to be rooted in mysticism and superstition, but that isn't always the case. In 2016, the skeletons of 9 Neanderthals were found in Shenandoah Cave, northern Iraq. Each of them was between 20 and 30,000 years old. One of them belonged to a man who experienced several medical issues during his life. Damage to his eye socket indicated he was probably blind, and at least one eye and his left leg was twisted by arthritis. Most strikingly of all, he was missing an arm. A person in such a weakened state would have been of little value to a tribe of hunter-gatherers, but it's evident that he was cared for by the rest of the tribe even though he couldn't contribute to their way of life. In fact, it seems that his arm was removed surgically, probably after suffering an injury. Surgically, removing a limb without killing the patient is a dangerous and difficult process even today, but this man's surgeon managed to do it successfully. 30,000 years ago, the operation would have been painful without anesthetic, but it's a wonder it was ever achieved at all. The Turo stone has been considered a great historical curiosity for hundreds of years in its native Ireland. You'll find it today standing on a private lawn in front of Turo House, County Galway, from where it gets its name. That's not where it used to be. When it was carved and inscribed around 2100 years ago, it stood outside a so-called fairy fort elsewhere in Ballan. When it was moved in the 19th century, all of its provenance was lost. That makes it difficult for modern archaeologists to determine who carved it precisely, when, or why, aside from a feeling that it might have been used in fertility rituals because of its phallic shape. Archaeologists have no idea of its purpose. It's been noted that the abstract design etched into its surface is reminiscent of the Latin style, which is replicated on the castle's strange stone elsewhere in Ireland. While it's been lifted as a national monument of Ireland by the county's government, little is known about it in terms of its true history. The ancient Egyptians were adept at building many things, but statues were something they did especially well back when they were brand new. Their statues looked even more impressive than they do now. That's because of their incredibly realistic eyes. The eyes of most ancient Egyptian statues have long since been plucked out and stolen, but we can see a fantastic example in the statue of Metri, a chief scribe of the 5th dynasty, who lived 4,500 years ago. The artifact can today be found in Cairo Museum, complete with its piercing blue eyes. The lenses of the eyes are made with a kind of rock crystal called lapis lazuli, which has been polished to a shine. The material is considered precious now and would probably have been even more precious then, which explains why theft was such a common problem. There's also a statue of the pharaoh Horus, who ruled over 3,700 years ago and has eyes that are blue when seen from one angle and brown when seen from another. Around 700 years after the statue was made, the Egyptians stopped making such realistic eyes for their monuments. Was this because of the theft? Or was it simply because all knowledge of how to achieve such perfection had been lost? What was it that inspired the ancient Chinese Hong Shan culture to make so many strange statues out of jade? Sadly, unless we find a hidden repository of their knowledge, we may never. All we can do is appreciate the artistic beauty of their creations and wonder about the processes that created them. Virtually nothing is known about the Hong Shan aside from the fact that they were a Neolithic era culture and they lived in and around China's Liao River. The jade figurines they made are interesting because while they're mostly humanoid in shape, they don't appear to be representations of humans. What people see when they look at them varies from observer to observer. Some people look upon the statues and see dragons or horned beasts. Others see goats, deer, cattle, or other animals. There are even a few examples that look like the classic gray alien that's so beloved by science fiction writers. It's no wonder that some people believe that this ancient community was visited by extraterrestrials. Perhaps it's more likely that these are figurines of the gods that the Hung Sh worshipped. If so, they are remarkable works of devotion. Art and religion were often closely associated in ancient Greece. We can see that by looking at this incredible glass cantharos, which is on display at the Historical Museum of Moscow. Historians believe the artifact to be around 2,560 years old. The glass vessel is elaborately ornamented by a solid gold frame. Like most cantharos, the vessel has two vertical handles, and it's decorated with precious stones to go with the gold frame. They were used as drinking vessels, although archaeologists believe that this particular example was used by priests to offer sacrifices to Dionysus, the god of wine. We can only hope that the vessel was filled with wine rather than blood. The quality of the soldering, embossing, and granulation on the piece is exquisite. Even though there are pages and pages of ancient Greek writings in museums and libraries all over the world, there's no instruction manual anywhere. That explains to us how Greek artists were able to work with gold like this. To achieve some of these effects today, we'd use a microscope to ensure precision and accuracy, but that wasn't a luxury available to them. We can't be sure of the identity of the first person to carve caves into the mountain sides of Man-up Kale, Crimea. All we know is that whoever they were, they started a trend that lasted for centuries. Dating carved rock isn't easy, but archaeologists believe that the oldest of the caves was carved around 1600 years ago. The depth and scale of the caverns are breathtaking, such as the level of work that went into it that historians think that only a Byzantine emperor could or would have ordered it to be done. But that can't be proven. If we follow that theory, we can guess that the caves were created as a fortress to guard the early Christian principality of Theodoro. Their use changed over time, and by the 13th century, people lived in the caves and referred to the area as Doros. Life in the caves continued until the region was attacked by the massed forces of the Ottoman Empire, with much damage being done in the process. Fortunately, the beautiful ancient fresco survived. If only they contained a few clues about the intentions of the people who painted them. There are dozens of different ways to make a temple. By the 8th century, the human race had got temple building down to an art. Considering the limitations of the era, we were able to build temples quickly and efficiently. That makes it a little odd that someone went to the trouble of carving an enormous one out of a single chunk of rock in India. This is Veduvan coil, and as impressive as it looks, it might not even be finished. The temple's builders started at the top and worked their way down, and the lower levels appear less complete than the upper levels. Having said that, it was probably very dark in the lower levels because they're so far underground. What little detail there is down there might have been the best the workers could do. While the origin of the temple is a mystery, there's a somewhat grisly local legend about it. If you translate Veduvan coil into English, it becomes Temple of the Slayer. The legend says that a father and son competed with each other to see who could make a rock-hewn temple faster. The son made Veduvan coil, but when it became apparent he was going to win the race, his father killed him to protect his honor. Later, consumed by grief, he destroyed the temple he built out of shame. Might that be true? Probably not, but it's certainly a colorful story. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, and you'll be the first to know when a new video comes. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.